Hello, good morning. What's up? My name is not Emma, and today I'm going to be telling you all about my most favorite and least favorite books that I read in 2019. 2019? Bitch. 2020. My most and least favorite books that I read in 2020. Oh my goodness. I'm going to be giving you 5 favorites and 5 least favorites. So let's get right into it. And I just want to say before we get started, I do have my notes on my phone that I wrote out for this. So if I'm looking down at them, that's what I'm doing. Okay, so I want to start this video off on a positive note. So I'm going to start with my favorite books of the year. The first book that I consider a favorite from this year, I actually only gave 4 stars, and that is Caucasia by Danzy Senna. This book is so excellent. For the majority of it, I thought that the last 50 pages were pretty weak and brought the quality of the book to kind of a stop, and so I only gave it 4 stars. But I love this book so much. I read it for school 2 semesters ago, and it was so excellent. It is about 2 sisters who are mixed race. Their mother is white and their father is black. One of them looks black and one of them looks white, and so something happens where they have to separate, and the white passing child goes with the white mother and the black passing child goes with the black father. And it's about the white passing child learning to navigate her interracial identity and understand what it means to be white and what it means to be black in America. Oh my god, it was so excellent. There were so many passages that I underlined, and I want to read it again so bad. My mom actually has my copy. That's why I'm not holding it up, and she just finished it and she really loved it also. So when I see her next, I will be getting it back. Even though I gave it only 4 stars, I feel like I'm going to be reading this book over and over and over again. The next favorite that I want to mention is Stargazing by Jen Wang. This is a middle grade graphic novel about 2 girls who are both Chinese American, and they're learning to understand their Chinese American identity. One of them is more rebellious and one of them is more self-contained. She has stricter parents, and they're both coming into their own. I absolutely loved the art in this book. It was so whimsical, and it really lent itself to the kind of surrealist, magical elements in this book. It's a really quick read, and if you can get your hands on it, I really recommend that everyone checks it out. My next favorite book is actually a nonfiction book. It is White Rage by Carol Anderson. I read this originally because of the Blackout Buddy Read hosted by Reads with Shay. I'll link her down below. This book was excellent. It was very accessible. It recontextualized so much of what I learned in my public school education that just isn't correct, that is just lies perpetuated by the systemic racism that exists in America. And I learned so much. I think about this book all the time. I read it, I think, in June or July, and I have thought about it almost every week since then. I know there was a big push this summer to read nonfiction about race, and if you haven't done that because you're intimidated or you think it'll be too hard, I think this is a really good place to start. I really enjoyed reading it. It was really hard to read at times, but not because it was inaccessible, just because it was true, and these were things that I really needed to learn, and I think everyone could benefit from reading this book. Oh, and I gave it 5 stars. It was excellent. My next favorite is The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. I gave it 5 stars. You're gonna get tired of me saying that I gave it 5 stars. I hope you're not tired of hearing me say I gave it 5 stars, because these are my favorites, so I obviously rated them all really high. This is a book that is written in verse, and it was so powerful. I absolutely loved the language and the poetic elements to it. It follows the main character for many years of his life, and it covers so much growth. It tackles his identity as a mixed race person. He is half Jamaican and half Greek, and he doesn't feel black enough and he doesn't feel Greek enough. It is so special to see someone coming into their identity as a gay man specifically, and embracing drag as a form of expression and experimenting with gender presentation and expression. And I thought this story was so beautiful. It made me tear up a couple times. I listened to it on audio, and if that is accessible to you, I highly recommend it. Hearing the poetry spoken to me really enhanced the rhythm and my overall experience of reading this book. My last favorite of the year is kind of interesting because it's a romance book, and I don't really ever read romance books. and it's Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This book really made the rounds on BookTube this year. Everyone was talking it up so much, and I wasn't really interested in it until I learned that the heroine, Chloe Brown, lives with a chronic pain condition. And I don't know if you know this about me, but I also deal with chronic pain, and I haven't read a lot of books that give good chronic pain representation, so I figured I would give this a try. And needless to say, I bought a copy and I loved it so much. The representation was excellent. It was so nice to see someone with chronic pain have a full life and have friends and have a relationship and have a career and be a whole independent person who still had her needs met. I love this so much. It's so special to me. And this just shows me that we need more representation because I don't care about romance, but I loved this book. Not because of the romance, but because I felt represented for one of the first times in my life. Of course, I want to give an honorable mention to my favorite book of all time, which I read twice this year, and that is Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars, A Dangerous Trans Girl's Confabulous Memoir by Cheng Thom. I didn't include this in my overall favorites because I read it for the first time in 2019, but I did read it twice, and it is still my favorite book, so I just wanted to include it. Now we are going to be moving on to my least favorite books of the year. Now, I read 211 books this year, so I only had 3 one-star books, which is, I think, pretty good in my opinion to only have 3 one-star books out of 211 total books. I did have a fair number of 2-star books, and there's going to be a couple of 2-star books on this list, but for the most part, I gotta say, I'm pretty proud of myself for picking books that I, for the most part, would like. Actually, most of these books I didn't even pick for myself. So we'll start with the first one, which is the book that I read most recently out of this least favorites list, and I read it for school. That is Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luiselli. I talk more about this in my books I read for school this semester video. I thought I thought the writing was bad, and there's also some upsetting content in here that I don't think needed to be included. If you want to hear my full thoughts, go watch the other video, but I hated this book, and that's all you need to know. Next up, I have You Are Not Alone by Greer, Hendricks, and Sarah Pekkanen. I read this because of the Literally Dead book club hosted by Books and Lala. Again, I'll link her down below, but this is a mystery thriller book, and I don't really remember anything about it. I didn't write a good review on Goodreads, so I have no idea what this is about. I could read the description and tell you what it's about, but why bother? I don't remember anything about this book except that while I was reading it, I was having a bad time and I hated everything that was happening. I gave it 1 star and I can't really say anything else about it. I actually read Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen's other 2 books, and I didn't really like them. I think I gave them 3 and 2 stars. I don't really remember, but I wouldn't have picked this up if it wasn't for the Literally Dead book club, and I don't think I'm going to be reading anything else by these authors. The only book that I gave 1 star that I actually picked for myself was Katie Friedman Gives Up Texting by Tommy Greenwald. I randomly saw this at the library one day. I have been wanting to read more middle grade this year, so I just looked at the middle grade shelf and I randomly picked one. I thought it looked interesting. Clearly, I was wrong. This book really gave me like peak boomer energy. It was about this girl who like accidentally texts her friend something embarrassing, and so she decides to give up cell phones and texting for a week. And there was some really harmful rhetoric about phones and the way that the world is changing. I just felt like I was being lectured by my grandma. Not even my grandma, because my grandma is cool. I text her all the time. It just felt very out of touch, very out of date. And basically, the whole thesis of the book was cell phones bad. And I don't think that's useful in this day and age, especially for children who are growing up in the age of cell phones. My next least favorite book is Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. I gave this book 2 stars, and I don't know, I have a pretty complicated history with Malcolm Gladwell. I was introduced to him by my high school history teacher senior year. My teacher recommended that we listen to his podcast, Revisionist History, and I really, really enjoyed it senior year of high school and freshman year of college. And then as more seasons came out, I started to realize that I don't actually agree with a lot of the things he was saying, so I stopped listening to his podcast. I've actually read 2 of his other books. I don't remember what they're called. Maybe I'll put them on the screen. We'll see. I thought the first one was great. I thought the second one was just okay, and this last one, Talking to Strangers, I didn't like at all. And so I think this is where my journey ends with Malcolm Gladwell. I don't anticipate picking up any of his new books, and I'm not particularly interested in any of the other books that he has published. So I think I'm done with him for now, for this part of my life. Moving on. This final book was so disappointing. I really thought that this book was going to be a favorite of the entire year, and that is Sick Kids in Love by Hannah Moskowitz. Again, I don't read a lot of romance, but I picked this up because of the premise that both of the characters were either chronically ill or dealt with chronic pain, and I really wanted to see some positive representation. This had been getting really good ratings, and so I picked it up. And the first half was so excellent. The chronic pain rep was beautiful, and I felt more seen than I ever had in my entire life. I read this earlier in the year before I read Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and so this was kind of the first book that I read where a character had similar experiences to me. And I'm so upset at how this book went because this will always be the first book where I saw myself. And even though it's bad, this book is going to have such a special place in my heart because before reading this book, I didn't realize I would be able to see myself represented. And that's why it's even more heartbreaking that it ended the way it did. This book perpetuated some really harmful tropes with regards to disabled people. Not to mention the character work in this book was extremely weak. I hated the arc of the main character, and I thought what's the opposite of grow? She got worse. I thought she got worse by the end of the book. And for a book that got so much right about living with a disability, it also made the decision to use the worsening of illness as a very large plot point, which I think is super harmful because if you live with a chronic illness, it gets worse sometimes, it gets better sometimes, but it's always there. It's not like every time you go through a dip in your chronic illness, your life changes. And I think it's really harmful to perpetuate that and to use something as serious as a health crisis to further the plot. I thought that was really lazy and harmful, and I don't recommend this book. Or maybe I do, I don't know. If you've never read a book with chronic pain rep and you have chronic pain, I don't know. I was really hurt by this book, despite how much I love it and how much I wanted it to be a favorite of all time. I don't know. This exists. I think if you want to read a romance about a character with chronic pain, you should read Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I think that book is so much better. So, you know what? Don't read this book. Don't read Sick Kids in Love. It's harmful and it's problematic and it's bad. That's it. Clearly, I'm still mad about it. That is it. Those were my 5 favorite and least favorite books of the entire year. I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me. That's all I got. Bye!